Choose your fighter. Will it be websites versus social media? Pick your fighter. Dun 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 dun. You're listening to the Victorian Podcasters Podcast, your bite-sized slice of podcasting know-how. We're all about connecting Victorian podcasters, newbies, pros, and the I'm gonna crowd. We'll put your money where your mouth is and join our emailing list and Facebook and LinkedIn groups for exclusive updates, resources, and our community Q&A, because podcasting doesn't have to be a solo gig. Vic Podcasters is proudly produced on Wadawurrung land. Game over. Well, not really game over, but we're still starting the episode. But join with me as I ask the big question that a lot of you in the Vic Podcasters groups, Facebook, LinkedIn, and email newsletters has been asking about. Do I need a website or social media for my podcast? Everyone else has it, all the big players have it, all the celebrities have it. Should I do this? The questions I want to ask you, because of course this is never a simple, it's easy, or it's never a simple one-word answer. I want to ask you, what do your listeners find you on easier? If you want listeners to find you, to stumble upon you, then yes, having websites and social media definitely help. Do you want to grow your brand or your audience or the project that your podcast is attached to? Do you want to grow your personal brand? You'll need some kind of online presence. It doesn't necessarily have to be socials or a website, but it's gonna definitely help. And if you're just doing a podcast that is just for fun or with mates or learning a new skill, then maybe not. But it's also still handy to have that in your back pocket of skills that you can do whatever you plan to do with your life. Touching on why a podcast website helps. Essentially, think about your podcast website or a website where your podcast not necessarily is hosted, but where people can find out more information about your podcast, maybe even show notes, think of it like your podcast's home online. There is one link to rule them all. It is a domain that everyone can go to, and hopefully by the time you have generated this and started creating episodes, your fans will know the URL by heart because you will say it over and over and over and over again. Speaking of which, vcc.training/vic-podcasters for our URL, by the way. And when you are setting up your podcasts, a lot of podcast hosts are now providing free basic web pages that can be your podcast home online. Keeping in mind that there is a bit of pros and cons to this, but we won't get too deep into that in this episode. Essentially, when you are, say, paying for a host distribution service, again, go back to our episodes about paid versus free hosting platforms. Some of these web pages are really basic and don't offer a lot of functionality, but it's a place where you can keep all the information together. And in those events that you want to have more customization, you might need to pay for a web service or something of that ilk. What you can do on that web page is then add episode transcripts for SEO. You can include in-depth show notes, links, and guest info. I highly recommend. I do that for all of my episodes here. If you have not checked out our own show notes, make sure you check the first link in the description of each of our episodes, because we like to do a very big rundown of everything that we do, to be able to provide not just everything that I'm mentioning here, but also to be able to provide a platform for email signups. So you can, have future monetization in your podcast. Future-proof your podcast with things that you can do easily and basically for yourself and your podcast. Vic Podcasters was brought to you by the Video Confidence Coach. That's me, smashing your marketing mayhem with killer video strategies. Love ya. Moving on to socials. Socials can work for your podcast too. It can help you build community and connection with both pre-existing fans and potential new fans. Your listeners and watchers want to talk back to you sometimes. Sometimes you say the wrong thing, and you will all let me know that in the groups and the social media platforms that we run. You can also have the opportunity to have quick promo wins. You can have audiograms, behind the scenes, and episode tiers, and also get feedback. Social is social for a reason. It's becoming less and less so over time, but it is still a place where people can stumble upon your podcast. Half of the TikTok algorithm is podcast content at this point, to be honest. And you don't have to choose every single platform. You can pick 1 to 2 platforms that align with your audience and where they hang out, and that is where you put your focus. You can put maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day, they're promoting yourself, promoting your podcast, but also genuinely helping your audience by answering their questions. So how do I need to decide, Zoe? So imagine if you are someone who is just starting your podcast, utilizing your host's free webpage and one social account is a good place to start. It gives you that freedom to be able to practice without overwhelming yourself. And then once you get some sort of process and schedule going, it'll become a lot easier because you will be in a habit. If you are someone who is building a personal brand or a business brand, and you're able to have, say, the podcast be a subsection of your website or a landing page, utilize that. You're already paying for it for your business, might as well add the podcast on top as a little bit of a amuse-bouche. And your socials, you can also use for engagement and visibility because you're also growing the brand and the business and the podcast at the same time. You can use that content to get into that algorithm of podcast episodes. And if for someone like myself who hates social media, don't worry, I feel you there, you can focus on growing your email newsletters or collaborating with other podcast apps instead. You can also prompt in your episodes to prompt your listeners or your watchers to engage in word of mouth, because people always are happy to listen to an episode or two that their mother recommends them, even if they don't want to. But warning, 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 do not burn yourself out. I want to stress this. As someone who produces an awful lot of podcasts and who does this on a regular basis, whether I try to or not, you do not need to be everywhere at once. You do not need to burn yourself out to be seen. One channel that has consistent content, that is answering comments, that is being there for the audience, is better than 5 neglected channels. Repurpose your content. You do not owe loyalty to any one platform, especially when you're doing this work and giving it to them for free. Clip your podcast, make a reel, make a quote, link to the episode, bada bing, bada boom, do that and repeat. Now that you've listened to this episode, it's time to choose your fighter. Choose your main online home. Is it going to be a focus of a website or social media or a combination of the two? Update your podcast description with those links. Make sure those things are linked, because there are so many times where I've worked with people and they are not linked. Have those things linked together, make it as easy as possible for people to jump from one to the other so they can find you. And also tell your listeners in your podcast, maybe even bake it into your hooks or your intros or your outros, where people can find you outside of the episode. When they have spent their time with you listening to the episode, where can they go next? For example, make sure to check out our website, vcc.training/vic-podcasters, or join our Facebook or LinkedIn or email groups. And you can find that all at VIC Podcasters. Doing this amount of distribution and marketing and work can seem overwhelming, but it's ultimately about being findable. Not famous, not viral, findable. Don't have the must have everything, little voice inside your head get you. You can always grow later. Start simple, stay sane, build your habits, and grow from there. Episodes to check out in the archive are episode 7, How do I get people to listen to my podcast? And episode 14, 3 ways to promote your podcast online. That's part of a mini series where we have 3 simple ways to promote your podcast in person too, where we got a lot of good feedback. So make sure you check those episodes out. That's a wrap. Remember, we're here every week to share quick tips, updates, and the occasional bad joke. Feeling inspired? Good. Now hit record or go to the show notes of this episode for a backstage pass experience of the Victorian podcasting scene. The Vic Podcasters would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians on the land on which we work, live, and play. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. We stand with the traditional custodians of these lands in working towards a more equal future. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And remember, podcasting doesn't have to be a solo gig.